On today's Community Wednesday, let's break down the XM4. The XM4 has always been in and out of the meta, whether it's been a sniper support weapon or a long-range build. But today, we'll be checking out the meta long-range XM4 and seeing how it stacks up against all the other weapons. In this build, we'll be using the agency suppressor, the 13.5-inch Task Force barrel, axial arms 3x optic, field agent grip, and Stanag 60-round mags. So let's get straight into the stats, starting with mobility. It has an ADS time of 360 milliseconds, which is quite bad, especially for an assault rifle. It's definitely over the line of what I would count as acceptable, so definitely don't use it in close quarters. Its reload and reload add times are 3 seconds from empty and 2.36 if you leave one bullet in the mag. And with its mag cap of 60, these things are pretty good. Its motor and sprint speeds are great because, of course, they're Cold War weapons, but they're not as high as some other ones. And with its ADS straight speed of 1.6 meters per second, it's where it should be, but a bit slower than I expected. Its sprint out and tac sprint out times are at an average 250 and 390 milliseconds. So if you can, try to sprint out instead of tac sprint out. Its stability is 2T, which isn't the greatest, but still works for long range. And its bullet velocity is at a great 1,176.5 meters per second. And lastly, its rate of fire is at a pretty great 12.05 rounds per second or 723 rounds per minute. So it gets a mobility score of 36. Its recoil is quite low and it follows a very easy pattern. Due to its aim instability, it may veer off a tiny bit to the left or right, but either way, you're not going to be noticing it too much. But you'll still be able to use it up to 125 meters, which is decent. So it gets a recoil score of 43. For its damage, it has a drop-off point at 33 meters. In the first damage range, its headshot TTK isn't going to be the greatest, but its upper torso, lower torso, and limb TTKs are going to be below average, which is expected for long-range weapons. However, in the second damage range, all of its TTKs are going to be average, which is great, especially since you'll actually be able to hit every single shot. But it gets even better. If you get one headshot in the mix, you'll get an above average TTK in both ranges. And quickly, for 300 HP damage modes, it's going to get an average TTK no matter which range you're shooting at and at which part. And in the second damage range, if you get one headshot, it's going to give you an above average TTK. So it gets a damage score of 47.5, and when we add up all the categories, 126.5. This is a pretty decent score for a long range weapon. It has a pretty good mix of recoil, mobility, and damage. It won't be reaching out as far as many of the other longer range weapons, but it's going to be getting a much better TTK. And it's especially nice when you can get one headshot and reduce your TTK. It being a Cold War weapon, of course, it does get pretty decent mobility, but its ADS time isn't the greatest, and that's the one thing you gotta watch out for. As long as you're not ADSing in and out too much, you'll be fine. And definitely don't try to use it up close. If you're already aiming down sights and you see someone rushing you, then yeah, of course, shoot him. You're gonna deal pretty good damage. But if you're rushing into a building, make sure you have a good secondary. And even though you won't be able to stretch out as some other weapons that have less recoil, just make sure you can find places to mount and you'll be doing just as good, but you'll be getting a better TTK. The XM4 is a pretty good example of a jack of all trades weapon, and no matter which mode you're in, it's going to be doing really great. So that's the XM4. Have you used it recently? And if so, what do you think about it? And if there's any other weapon, build, or part of the game you want me to break down, let me know. You may see it on the next Community Wednesday. Thanks for watching.